but what story am I going to tell myself when I'm 85 years old sitting on the porch? For my first 30 years, I did this corporate real estate job, and it was great and checked a lot of boxes. But what about the next 30 years? How did I take everything I learned and go make a difference in other people's lives, whether it's people or businesses? The comfortable thing certainly would have been to stay. But I think it is looking at the evidence versus emotion. The evidence is that I'm likely to be successful. Yeah. You've got to overcome the emotion, which is really fear. But then you have to position yourself properly, right? Think it through. And, it's not easy. I think you've got to stick with it. It's going to take a little bit of time, but it's worth doing. It's worth betting on yourself.
Yeah. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Men on Purpose podcast, where our mission is to elevate, educate, empower, enrich, and evolve men to be on purpose. Why? So that they can reveal their most authentic self, live their most fulfilling and regret-free lives possible. I think it's pretty damn important, and that's why I'm on this mission, and I'm so freaking grateful you guys are here. I'm on the road, just moved to LA. I'm back sitting in my parents' house. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, you're going to hear dogs barking. You're going to hear lawnmowers. You're going to hear things fall. You're going to hear a phone ring. It is what it is. None of that matters because the content is so damn good. My guest today is a good friend of mine, a mentor to me, Gene Parker from Parker Advisory and Parker University, an absolute expert in anything and everything commercial real estate investing. Now, before I tell you about Gene, let's go over the free resources. You ready? The Men on Purpose community, right? If you haven't joined it yet, we've got, I think by this time we have like 300 members, which is awesome. The Men on Purpose community is really important that you go right now and you get signed up for the Men on Purpose community on Facebook, because what we're going to be doing here today is a little surprise. You're going to have to listen to the end to be able to figure that one out, but you got to be a part of the Men on Purpose community on Facebook to be able to get this little surprise at the end. Hint, hint. All right. Next, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, go on iTunes or wherever you listen, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever, and click that subscribe button and subscribe to the Men on Purpose podcast. Okay, that's it. That's it. Well, got our front runner stuff. We've got a lot of events coming up, and we do have some spaces available for the November, December, and January events. So if you want to learn about our groundbreaking, proven, structured, like blow your mind personal involvement retreats, our front runner retreats, go to frontrunner.group or go to Men on Purpose podcast or my website, ianlobas.com, and you'll find out more about it. Awesome. We love them. We're so inspired and emotional and connected, and just, there's so many different things that happen with our front runner events. But it's not why we're here. Why we're here is to talk about investing in shopping centers. That's right. So investing in shopping centers was always something that I had no idea about. So when you don't have an idea or an understanding or an education about something, what's the first thing that we do? Well, we hate on it, or we fear it, or we put it off to the side, or we say, hey, that doesn't work for us. But in this case, I have Gene as an advisor. And Gene is really damn good with this. And I'm going to read you his bio, and you're going to realize why you should listen to this every single freaking minute. Have a pen and paper out. This thing is going to be packed full of little secrets that you might not know about. And even if you do know about shopping center investing, you may learn something today that you didn't know, because Gene is real high up. And I'm talking like leading authority high up when it comes to investing in commercial properties, and then specifically shopping centers. So let me read you Gene's bio. Look, you guys know I don't pitch a lot of stuff on here. I let people pitch their websites and where they, if they have a product or where people can find them. I wanted to bring Gene on here today because, one, I love Gene's story. Gene was a former corporate guy that quit his job after like 26 years, which, come on, I mean, that takes a lot of balls. It does. Plain and simple. It takes a lot of balls. And he pushed himself through the fear. I helped him a little bit go through that transition from corporate life, breaking the golden handcuffs, and starting his own businesses, which he started a lot, and he runs a lot of businesses too. But I brought him on because I have so many friends of mine within this group and within my world that want to know about other blue oceans within the red ocean of commercial real estate investing, like multifamily or, whatever. And when I learned about shopping centers for Gene, I thought, okay, that's a blue ocean. I have not heard anybody talk about shopping centers like that. I learned so much the first time we talked. I said, hey, man, I'm going to help you build a course. Well, guess what? The course is ready. And I said to Gene, let's get the mental purpose community involved so that if you guys want to learn about it, great, awesome, let's do it. If not, listen to the episode. You're going to learn a ton. So let me give you Gene's bio, and then we're going to get right in. Ready? Okay, Gene Parker from Parker University and Parker Advisory is a very trusted leading authority and expert when it comes to commercial real estate investing for over 28 years. 26 of those years of his career, he spent with a 300-employee, $2 billion company where he served as the president for 10 years, right? He's a real deal. Gene was also the COO at one of the largest commercial property developers and commercial property developers and managers in Central Maryland. He's a principal broker he's a principal and broker of record at Rosso Commercial Real Estate Services. He also owns Parker Advisory, which I mentioned, where he consults and partners with real estate fundraisers and investors to help them grow and scale their real estate investing businesses. Gene's experience in commercial real estate includes investments, includes operations, leasing, asset management, and fundraising. He's got experience in large multifamily apartments and shopping centers and offices and flex properties, and you name it, he's done it. So Gene has been directly involved with raising nearly $500 million in 4 real estate private equity funds. You want to learn how to raise money? Pretty sure Gene is a leading authority in that. So stay tuned for that. We're going to talk about raising funds. Gene's a Master of Science in Real Estate from Johns Hopkins University, an MBA from Loyola University of Maryland. He also holds 5 real estate broker licenses in Maryland, DC, Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Need more? Here you go. Gene's also been a graduate level instructor at Georgetown University for the past 10 years, an instructor at Johns Hopkins University, yes, the Johns Hopkins University, for 15 years, and is frequently requested as a guest speaker and lecturer at other prestigious universities. He serves on the board of Chevy Chase Land Company and Royco Properties, which are a big deal. Gene is currently an active firefighter and EMT, and he's a former U.S. Marine. So today we're going to be talking about investing in shopping centers, why it's so lucrative, how you can get involved, and just either get involved or take what you know and learn even more today. So look, listen for the end, but I'm going to give you this sneak peek. So tonight, if you're listening to this on the 20th, when this episode comes out tonight, we're going to be doing the first course of Gene's 12-step get your butt into investing in shopping centers and be really freaking good at it course. We're going to do the first step tonight, September 20th, for free inside the Mental Purpose Facebook community. Go in there, click on the events tab, and you're going to find more information. I'm sorry, I was going to wait till the end, but I can't. I'm too excited. Then the next weekend, the next Monday, whatever that is, this 27th, we're going to be doing the second course in his 12-step for free for the Mental Purpose community. So you want it? Then jump into the events tab in the Mental Purpose community right now and make sure that you hit an alert. And if you're not a part of the Mental Purpose community, go join it right now. Don't mess around. You're going to learn a ton in this. We're going to give you as much as we possibly can, just to offer as much value as we possibly can. It's our thing. Elevate, educate, empower, enrich, and evolve to be on purpose. So go be on purpose, join the community, or go set the reminder for the class tonight. That's it. All right, you ready? Here we go. Here's the episode. This is Gene Parker. Enjoy. All right, Gene. Today we're going to learn about shopping centers, buddy.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Well, you're the one who's teaching. I'm learning. The rest of the audience is going to learn. So
Perfect.
I told the audience in the intro that sitting at your house that one day, and you talked to me for maybe 20, 30 minutes about shopping centers. It completely not only changed my mind as to other big commercial investments and how lucrative and amazing they can be, but it opened up an entire world of possibilities for me. So before we get into that, which we are going to get into learning about shopping centers and shopping center investment, and the severe benefits and perks to that, but first, let's talk to the audience and tell them about your background, your story, and like how you got to be who you are today and opening up all the things that you're opening up. So go as far back as you want to go.
Sure. No, I'll start, maybe I'll start in high school.
Yeah.
And even before that, I was always the kid that was sort of never the smart kid. What happens in sort of fifth, sixth grade, if you can't do fractions, add and subtract fractions, you get put in sort of the slower kids group, and so it's a funny thing. So, that I think that sort of stuck with me, and, math was sort of never my thing. It's funny now because I teach it, but, finished up high school, went to college, and, and everything's fine first year, community college. Second year, I wasn't doing so well, and I thought to myself, need some kind of intervention. So I thought, well, let me join the Marines. That'll solve it. So I thought, a few months at Paris Island would do the trick. And it did. I lost, 40 or 50 pounds and came back, wound up pretty tight, and got myself back into school and finished up school and really didn't know what to do after college. This is going back to sort of January of 1990. And, worked in a couple different industries that involve management and sales. And what I realized is I really love the sales side, which isn't my natural personality, but I love getting paid for what I do versus what everybody around me does. Yeah. It's funny because I've since become a manager too. But at the time, I got into outside sales and I was selling, engines and transmissions and funny things like that. I was always a car guy and it seemed natural. But it didn't seem like a career. And I had family members involved in commercial real estate, and I thought maybe there's something there. So this is going back to 1992. I decided, well, maybe the way to get into commercial real estate is to get my real estate license. So Howard Community College, sign up, and went in evenings and picked up my real estate license. Coincidentally, I was introduced through my father-in-law to a commercial real estate development company up in Baltimore. And anyway, through a series of interviews, I ended up getting this job as a director of leasing. I didn't entirely know what that meant. And as a director, I didn't have anybody to direct. Actually, my admin assistant was really teaching me the business. But they thought there was something there. And what they were looking for is someone that had sales experience but didn't know real estate. And I was a salesman, but I really didn't know the real estate business till I had my license. I think the real reason I was hired is because the CEO of the company at the time was a Marine. And I think he said, you know what, let me take a shot with this guy. Anyway, that's January 1993. And I started out as this director of leasing. And my first job was leasing shopping centers, whatever that is, And so, I'm learning on the fly. And it occurred to me 5 months later, this is sort of May of 93, that they really weren't going to teach me. And so I spent the next 6 years in graduate school going to get the education that I thought not only did I need, but I probably wasn't going to get from my employer, certainly not as fast as I thought I needed it. So I did a master's in real estate and then an MBA. And after 6 years, sort of had, I think, what I needed, and then began to do things like join boards and learn about how other businesses work. As I progressed with the company, this development company, we had about $1 billion in real estate at the time. When I left after 26 years, we had about $2 billion and 300 employees. So a lot of growth during that time. I was fortunate to really be in a lot of different roles. When I was leasing shopping centers, which is really just going out and finding, tenants, businesses that wanted to open in one of my empty spots, I began to run into problems with my property management team. And I remember going to the owner and saying, hey, I think I'd like to take over the property management team. And he said, you don't know anything about property management. And I said, well, I don't really need to. I just need to know the outcome I want.
Right.
He said, okay. So he called in the head of property management and said, Gene's taking over. And so that began a progression really over my 26 years with this firm, where I really just kept looking for problems. I was willing to take them on. And not only did nobody fight me for it, but after a while, you actually got paid and rewarded for it with titles and promotions. And so, it was good. My last 10 years I spent as the president of the company. As I said, we had about $2 billion in real estate and about 300 employees. And, it was a lot of fun. At some point after, more than half my life, I decided it was, time to make a change. But during that time, I learned a lot. We, at the time it was a family business, two families that owned all the assets. And during my last probably 10 or 12 years, it was clear that really to grow, we needed to find new sources of equity. And the way to do that was, there's lots of ways, but we decided to go out and put some private equity funds together to invest directly in real estate. And so during probably my last 10 years, we put 3 private equity funds together, raised about $450 million, and used that money to invest in strip shopping centers and multifamily apartment communities throughout the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast. So that was really sort of how I wound down my career, is raising those funds with the team of people that we had. And it was fun. Learned a lot. It was very different. And so now I take those skills that I learned through Continental, whether it's business development organization, leadership, commercial real estate, fundraising, this sort of bucket. And now I help clients do that around the world.
Okay, so I want to ask you, you said I wasn't really good at math, even though I teach math now. That's an interesting topic because I wasn't ever good at math. And part of our business is, a large part of our business is figuring out formulas. And everything is formulaic. Business is formulaic. And it's not math, but it is math. It's this plus this plus this plus this minus that equals this. So for somebody out there that is in a position where they're like, man, I have no idea how to do geometry or trigonometry or even algebra. How can I become a successful business person when I don't know that stuff? Because you and I have become successful in businesses that require math, but it's not math as a whole. It's math very specified, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so it's a great question. And so to dig a little deeper, I think a couple things. One is when I teach math, I always tell people the great news is Excel does the work for you today.
Right.
Really what you need to know is you need to know the inputs, right? And our math answers really come from good inputs. Specifically, I would say, the math I teach, and I think it's really, I use the term math, but it's really finance, accounting, and investment analysis, and to some extent return analysis. And so a lot of it is really just sitting down and saying, okay, what are the numbers and metrics that I need to solve for? Generally speaking, that's based upon your investor expectations. Right. And so it could be IRR, multiple, leverage return, return on equity, return on assets, whatever it is. And I think it's really understanding, okay, that comes from formula, revenue minus expense, minus debt service, minus capital, gives us NOI and net cash flow. And so the question is, what does that stream of income look like over time? And what would I pay for it today? So, it really is the idea of maybe you can't do fractions, maybe you can't do algebra and trigonometry and calculus. And frankly, I still can't do any of that, but I do know how to teach. I do know how to teach the finance and the accounting and the investment analysis and returns. It's very different. And I wouldn't get hung up on what you don't know. We all get paid in life for what we do well, and we get paid for our strengths, not necessarily improving our weaknesses. And so I think a lot of it is just simply not letting that early experience become a limitation for you.
I like that line. We get paid for our strengths, not necessarily improving our weaknesses.
Well, I saw a lot of people throughout my career do that, where they said, I work in this part of the business, but I really wish I knew the other part. And what I kept telling them is, we pay you for the things you're really good at, and hopefully you enjoy and they create a lot of value both for you and for us. We don't really pay you to improve on your weaknesses unless they're around the edges. Right.
Yeah. That's so well put, so well structured. I've never heard it put like that, because most people think, well, I'm not great at that. Like, I think school taught me, well, you're not great at this, so when you learn it, you'll be better and you'll be more comfortable and confident with it. But in my mind, as a defiant kid and a defiant adult, I'm like, I don't want to learn it. I don't care about it. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't want to learn it. I don't need to learn it. I don't care about any of it. It doesn't matter to me. My brain is not engaged. Well, when my brain is engaged, I can learn anything. Any of us can learn anything. It's just, do I actually need it? Do I want it? Maybe the problem is that nobody painted a picture for me to really want to learn certain things in school. And those are the struggles that I had, which was, it all was just forced down my throat with no explanation of why you need it, except for, if you want to be successful, you got to get good grades in school. That's it.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think students today, particularly young students, are given a very narrow view of the world. You take one of each class, and you really don't know the practical application. What I always tell my teams are it's very simple. We're fortunate because we're already here in this company. What we get to do is figure out, what do we enjoy? What are we really good at? What adds value? And then we get to hire people to do those other things that where they have different skills and interests, as opposed to us. So, it makes a lot of sense. It's better than, as you've sort of heard Jim Collins say in his books, The Good, the Great, it's about not just having the right people on the bus, but having the right people on the right seats on the bus.
Yeah.
And that's so important. There's no need to force fit. Force fits don't last long.
So eventually, and this is kind of where I met you, eventually you said, after 27 years?
26 years, yeah.
26 years, it was, okay, I can't do this anymore. I just cannot keep going like this anymore. So I want to dig into that, because there's a lot of people out there listening to these episodes that are like, I hear you, but you're special. You got something. You got $10 million in family money helping you, or you got like, I'm just making up reasons that people, give, or you've got something to fall back on, or you're already established, or whatever someone's excuse might be, who's maybe listening to any of these episodes where someone broke free from a trajectory that they were doing really well on, and you were making great money, like great money, but there was something inside of you that says, I can't keep doing this to myself. I can't keep going like this. Break that down, because there's one person in here that's listening that's going to need this like right now.
Sure. Well, I think that there's certainly some planning that goes into it. And I think, in my case, after 26 years, at this time, more than half my life, I said to myself, okay, my kids are largely grown and they're out of the house, and
Right.
those bills are paid, and there's a lot more options on the table maybe than there used to be. And, so some of it's sitting around and saying, okay, how much money do I need to save? And it's, to your point, it's not millions of dollars, but it's enough money to see you through a transition. And what other sources of income do I have? Now, the reality is I had created some sources of income for myself through university level teaching and a little bit of consulting and some board work, where I wasn't going to start at zero. But, as you said, it was going to be, a significant change. I didn't have the staff and the support. I didn't have the 401k and the salary and the benefits and the bonus. A lot of those things you get very accustomed to, and that keep you, in that seat. But, I think, and this is really to largely to your credit, is sitting down and saying, you know what, what's the worst that happens? Let's give it a try.
Right.
Because if you go out on your own, and that was really the transition, right? It wasn't leaving one job for another job. It was leaving this job to go out and really work for myself.
Yeah.
And whatever that looked like, however sort of the onion peel back. And it's certainly not easy to have changed and to sort of, to some extent, start at zero again.
Yeah.
But, I think if you really sit down and look at it, you say to yourself, well, what's the worst that happens?
Right.
If I totally fall on my face, then I'll just get a job. Like, that's the worst that happens, is I lose a little money because it didn't work out. But I think there's a few things, and you say it a lot. It's this idea of evidence versus emotion, right?
Yeah.
The emotion is, wow, it's very comfortable doing what I'm doing, and it's really all I know, and I could easily stick it out, and maybe another 6, 7, 8 years worth of this cash, I could retire. But then you say to yourself, but what story am I going to tell myself when I'm 85 years old sitting on the porch? For my first 30 years, I did this corporate real estate job, and it was great and checked a lot of boxes. But what about the next 30 years? How did I take everything I learned and go make a difference in other people's lives, whether it's people or businesses? The comfortable thing certainly would have been to stay. But I think it is looking at the evidence versus emotion. The evidence is that I'm likely to be successful.
Yeah.
You've got to overcome the emotion, which is really fear. But then you have to position yourself properly, right? Think it through. And, while it's not easy, I think you've got to stick with it. It's
Sure.
going to take a little bit of time, but it's worth doing. It's worth betting on yourself.
Yeah. There's something that I'm looking for here that the audience wants to hear, and which is, what was the breaking point? What was the last straw or final straw? Like, what was the point where you said, I got to go. I can't keep doing this. And it's more than the story you're going to tell. It's more than the legacy you're going to leave, but those things are very important. The legacy that you're going to leave, the things you're teaching and showing your children and other people that are looking up to you, the story you're going to tell, like all those things. But there's something else in there that broke inside of you, and you said, I can't keep going. I can't keep going like this. I'm more scared to stay in this career than I am to leave and do this on my own.
Yeah, I think, there was certainly a lot of things. It wasn't an overnight decision. I think one of them was COVID. During COVID, I found I went into the office every single day,
Yeah.
And I went in there and said to myself, what am I doing? I'm sitting in an empty office every day, and there's got to be more than this. I enjoy being in front of people. I like being a leader. I like being in front of a team. And, I really didn't have that. And some of that was COVID. Some of it was sort of the nature of the organization I was working in, which is fine. None of these are bad things. They're not fulfilling and rewarding things when you say to yourself, you know what, if I've gotten to a certain age where I've got a little bit of money set aside, and I've got a couple other sources of side income, all of which I've, intentionally put in place, and I've got a lot of the bills behind me, and the definition of failure is not that big a deal. Worst case is it doesn't work out, I get a job. you know what, why not try it? And if now, when, at the time I was 53, 52. And I said to myself, it's not going to be 10 years from now.
Right.
If not, it's going to be today when I've got the energy and I've got the drive and the motivation, and I still have my network and my contacts, and the ability to open some doors. So, I think for those people thinking about a change, I would really sit down and consider the evidence versus emotion, and really think about what's the worst that happens. The best that happens is, a whole new world opens up in terms of unlimited possibilities. Worst that happens is you're unhappy, you made a mistake, and you go back and get a job. But I think it's worth giving it a try. And I think you do it in a smart way, having thought it out.
Totally. And you and I are both entrepreneurs that have said, yeah, I think I may go back. I've never had a job, but there have been many times in my real estate career, not my coaching career, but my real estate career, where I was like, I think I'm going to go work for somebody. I can make half the money, but be responsible for 100% less, and not have all this anxiety and every the 28th of every month going, oh my God, I got to do this again. Oh, we're spending too much money. Our expenses are out of control. Or why did that marketing not work? I spent 10 grand on it. That's stuff that you don't have when you work for somebody, but you always run the risk that that person's thinking the same thing. And eventually they're like, you know what, I'm going to shut this thing down, and you're out of a job anyway. So you might as well go for it if you're that type of person. And for the guy that's listening, or the girl that's listening who says, yeah, but Gene was older. I was 29 when I left my dad's business, with nothing, broke, on my ass, with my freshly married, house in foreclosure and cars getting repoed before I could even look outside. And there's always going to be not the right time.
Sure. And
there's always going to be not the right time. That's it. There's no like, well, when this happens and this happens and that tweaks and that tweaks, it's never going to be the right time. The right time is whenever you decide you need to go, because you're determined and you'll make it. So you can either be in your 50s, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, it doesn't matter. 20 years at a company probably is harder to leave and start than 3 years. It's got to be, because now you're used to getting fed every week, No,
I think everything you said is true, and it makes sense. And those are the experiences I had. And I don't think there is ever a right time. I just think you have to do it. You have to act. Sure. And recognize that you have fallbacks. I think that the big takeaway that I've seen, is basically not loving Fridays and getting down on Sundays, right? It's the idea of there's some days I wake up and I can't figure out what day it is, because I kind of do the same thing every day. Right. I play during the week and I work on weekends, and my time's my own, and I'm probably working more, but I'm working on the things that are meaningful and impactful to me and to others. Yeah. And so, there's no distinction between, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is a really, really great feeling, and very hard to put a price on. Yeah.
And what that's about is living the life that you actually want, and not saying, well, I'm making X dollars. Maybe it's a really high figure. I'm making X dollars at this job. You know what? I've got the 401k. I've got the benefits. I got the check coming in. It's a cush job. I don't really have to work that hard. But you can't dip out on a Tuesday and go boating or go to the islands for a week, or you can't do that when you have that level of handcuff, regardless of how tight the handcuffs are on. When you're working for somebody, you're not free to do your thing. And if that's really something that's eating at you, and there's a heavy resistance that, like it was with you, like that's the time to say, all right, I'm pulling the trigger, and plan. You can prep and plan, but make a date. Just like Meredith and I did moving to LA. We put Ellis in school. We paid the thing up in the year up. And I said, this is when we're moving. And we were like, okay. And it started getting scarier and scarier and scarier. But then the Band-Aid got ripped off and it was totally fine. And yeah, it's still a little scary. And I shot a video last week or a couple weeks ago in the group where it's definitely nerve-wracking. I'm definitely uncomfortable. But it's worth it, because I know that I'm not cheating myself in any capacity, that I'm going after the things that I say I want to live the lifestyle that I want to live, which is freedom, which is total freedom to be able to do what I want when I want. That's it. If I want to take my kids to the pool from 12 to 4 on a Monday, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to build businesses to support that lifestyle. And that's my choice. And I feel great about that. And that's a great story to tell and a great legacy to leave, in my opinion. Not that having a job isn't, but if you're at your desk and you're constantly, especially if you're high level like you, and you're constantly thinking, this isn't it. This isn't it. I gotta figure out what the other side of the coin looks like, or what the dark side of the moon looks like, or whatever you want to say. Then you have to take that risk. And you have to know that it's going to be all right, because you will figure it out, or you just go back and get a job. Just because you leave doesn't mean that your skills and your marketable talents trail off behind you as you close the door. You're still there. The resume still looks the same, except the date has an end period, you know?
Sure. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I'll give you a couple thoughts. I think one, and this, take this in the right way, but it's like when you're dealing with employees and you've come to the conclusion that this employee is no longer a fit, and you're clear about that. Very, very, most managers and leaders and supervisors will not deal with that, right? They'll put it off and they'll find reasons not to part ways. And I, what I've learned over the years is that decision never gets better. The longer you wait, things don't get better for the organization. And so it's not unlike what we're talking about here. I've never made a change in an organization and said, I wish I had waited another 6 weeks, and I think it's the same thing in this case. You need to be thoughtful and you need to plan, but, at some point you just need to take action. A couple other thoughts, one is I always say to myself, as I think about the new opportunities that come up, because as you, leave an organization, which is very known to you, you're going to be faced with a lot of uncertainty, if you're going out to work for yourself. And one thing I always say to myself is opportunities come up, because more opportunities will come up than you think. I say to myself, if I had unlimited money, would I be doing this? And I think it's a good question. There's another one, this expression, if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a no. And I try to remind myself that as well, that if this is just not an absolute no-brainer, then you know what, let's just save the money and save the time for the next right opportunity. So just a few, thoughts on how I analyze opportunities that come up now.
Yeah, man, I love that. That the one, because you and I have talked about this before. I would always say that to myself when I was selling real estate, and the answer was no, I wouldn't. I would quit this in a heartbeat. If I had $10 million in my account, never again. I'm going to rip my license up. I never again. But when it comes to coaching, the answer is absolutely. Like 10 million sitting in my account, I'm still hanging with you, looking out over the water, strategizing on a business model. And like, that's really fun for me. The thing that I always say is we may be doing it we might have a different view. We might be on a yacht in the Caribbean or at a big house in LA or something, but I'm still doing that because I really love it. And that's how you know that resistance is the lowest. You'll get through all the resistance pieces probably most easiest. And like I always say, I got this quote from Jimmy Iovine from Interscope Records. Like, your goal, your job, every single time fear hits, it's going to be a headwind and try and push you and force you down and just tire you out and put you to the ground. But your goal and your job is to get better and better and better, which is what you've done, I've done as an entrepreneur, to spin that headwind, that fear as a headwind, to a tailwind and let it push you into the next thing, the next uncomfortable thing, the next big leap that you have to take, next chance you got to take, a risk. And then you get better and better and better at converting headwind to tailwind. And that's it. Like, there's no secret. You can't fend off fear. You're never going to be not scared as an entrepreneur or uncomfortable or fearful. You're just going to spin the fear faster and know through evidence over emotion that it's going to be fine. And if it's not fine, you're going to learn a hell of a lot, but you're probably going to gather some more stuff to know that if you ultimately fail and it's all over, that you can write up a quick resume and you can go get a job because you're a little bit better than you were yesterday.
Exactly.
I think.
Love it. That's right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
So I want to make sure we have time for shopping center stuff, because this fascinates me. And I'll tell you, listening to you talk about it was very helpful, because I honestly don't learn from just anybody. And my brain works fast and it latches onto somebody who says something interesting, and then they have to keep my attention. And if they don't, then I'm like, yep, no, I'm out. But you have a way of keeping my attention and keeping me interested in shopping centers. And I've been investing in multifamily and single family for a long time, flipping and doing some Airbnb stuff. In all honesty, and nothing against those things, but in all honesty, I personally got bored. I was bored with the multifamily model. I'm bored with the single family model. I'm not bored with the Airbnb model, but I was looking for something else. And I can't remember the line, that like shifted something in me that you said to me months and months ago. But there was a line you said, and I was like, oh my God, that sounds really fun. That sounds really fascinating. And that was it. And I was a convert at that point. Then we just started learning about shopping center investment. I think one of the biggest things I like is that you don't have all the residential tenant laws to deal with. You know what I mean? Like, this is a business in there, not someone's home. Very big difference.
Yeah, I think, and so I've worked a lot in multifamily over the years. When I left my longtime employer, we had 10,000 apartment units, and so I've spent a lot of time in that business, as well as other,
Sure.
Asset classes, flex office and flex warehouse and mid-rise office. But shopping centers, I think that there's some misconceptions about shopping centers today. One is that it's all retail, and retail is going away because of Amazon and e-commerce. And that's partially true. And it's certainly true with some types of properties, and that could be enclosed malls or power centers and that type of thing. And certainly lifestyle centers are being impacted. But the types of shopping centers that you and I are talking about are really neighborhood and community shopping centers that are full of service, convenience, and necessity types of uses. And so the centers that I'm talking about are really, you're not walking out with bags full of stuff. They're full of pizza shops and sub shops and hair salons and nail salons and service types of uses, the tax preparer. And so those uses tend to be very e-commerce resistant. They tend to be very sticky. That is, they stay for a long time, and you simply don't have the turnover that you might, for example, in multifamily. And I share your sentiment too about this isn't about beating up on multifamily. I think what I would say though about multifamily is that is the red ocean. There's a lot of people that are in single family, multifamily in that world. And I would say the blue ocean is shopping centers. There's comparatively fewer people in that world, particularly on the smaller side. There's plenty of institutional level investors, REITs and institutions involved in large centers because they have big checkbooks. But I would tell you that the neighborhood and community centers, it's not an untapped market, but certainly there are very, very few people that are really in that business. They've tended to be over the years owned by, mom and pop investors, the doctors and lawyers. They're generally not institutionally owned, and they're too small for the big institutional owners, but they're sort of too big and probably too complicated, at least in theory, for a lot of the people doing multifamily deals today. I actually think it's a much easier property type for lots and lots of reasons, even though I think a lot of the multifamily investors believe it to be more complicated. It's like everything. I don't know if it's more complicated. It's just different.
I did. I really thought it was, I never understood it. We had a lot of warehouse space with my dad's shipping company. I never understood how they make money. Like how, they're always negotiating the rates and the square footage. I'm like, how do they make any money? Because some of these spaces are sitting empty for like 2-3 years. Are they just paying out of their pocket? I was always turned off to it because I never understood how you just got tenants. And I think that just non-education that I had was scaring me away from it. Maybe like it's scaring other people who really know about how to get a residential tenant into like a multifamily, like even a duplex or a triplex or a 500 unit complex. It sounds like, or did sound like to me that it was a different methodology, which it is. And then a totally different world to play in. And I just couldn't understand how you make that business fit that space or that space fit that business. But it's actually very easy.
Yeah, it really is. And so the highlights, as I think about it, are, and you alluded to it earlier, this is really business to business, right? It's not business to consumer, business to resident. And so, for that reason, to me, it's a lot easier. And back to your comment about the sort of the property management side and dealing with the 24/7 aspect of multifamily, obviously in multifamily, it really is a 24/7 business. When the roof leaks, it's leaking in an apartment unit, and that's an immediate response and an immediate need to address. There's clearly a lot, and you see it today, there's a lot of government involvement in multifamily housing, whether it's price controls, whether it's requiring landlords to accept vouchers, whether it's the cancel rent culture that we see now. And it's not political, it's just simply economic. I believe that increasingly housing is going to become an entitlement. And as a result, you as the owner are going to have less and less, possibly less and less control over your spaces in your apartment units. Anyway, that aside, what I like about the shopping center business is it is business to business. If a roof leaks in the middle of the night, it's leaking on a stack of books, and that's something we can replace in the morning. It's not, the same type of emergency, understandably so. Also, when you think about multifamily, there's a significant amount of turnover, right? You have 1-year leases and 30, 40, 50%, depending on the market and the type of property. You have a lot of turnover, clearly. Commercial leases, shopping center leases tend to be 5 or 10 years, and oftentimes longer. The other nice thing is when tenants are ready to sort of get out of business, they basically oftentimes sell their business.
Yeah.
So in other words, if a pizza shop, after 30 years, it's time to move on, they don't just close up and walk away. They sell the business to somebody else and they essentially replace themselves.
Right.
That's clearly not true every time, but it happens a lot. In thinking about how to attract tenants to empty spaces, there's a lot of ways to do that. And we could, spend a lot of time on it, but I would simply say it's being thoughtful about the tenant mix. What does my center need that it doesn't have now, given the community? Does it have a dry cleaner? And if not, why? If it's got a pizza shop, does it have a sub shop? And if not, why? It's also thinking about what are the appropriate types of uses given the size and configuration of the space. If you have 12 to 1,500 foot space, there's certain types of users that make sense for that, given the frontage and depth, and given the signage and ingress and egress and invisibility, and also given the co-tenants in the center. So there's a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into that, but it's certainly doable. And I would say that, much like residential, you're working with a lot of brokers out there. Many retailers today, and I use that loosely, but it's anybody that would go into a shopping center, they will often hire real estate brokers to represent them, just like a buyer will in residential. And so oftentimes, if you have a 2,000 square foot space available in a shopping center, there's a broker out there representing 3 or 4 tenants, and they're going to bring the tenant to you. Hey, Gene, hey, I like the 2,000 square foot space in the center. What's the rent? Can we make a deal? So it's very much in that regard, like residential. It's like everything, while it seems like it's hard to, figure out a couple of years into the business, it makes a lot of sense.
One of the things that I was afraid of, and I'm calling out to the audience's potential insecurities or questions, because they still kind of are mine, even though I understand it from working with you for a long time with it. So I always thought that, how do I know that so many businesses go out, right? So many businesses, a pizza shop, a sub shop, a haircut, so many people go out of business. How do you know that a business is going to be viable? And I always thought that you really have to know how to understand and analyze a business. And maybe a part of your job, which is what I like to do, and this is what I do as a professional coach, but I like to help them build a better business in my shopping center. And that was what would be attractive to me. But do you really need to care about the business and how this person's running it, or does it not matter?
I think you do. I think if somebody calls and says, "Hey, Gene, I see you have 2,000 square feet available. How much is the rent?"
Right.
We never talk about the rent. What I talk about is, tell me about your business.
Right.
I want to understand, do you have an existing business? Are you going to be relocating? Do you have multiple locations? When you come in, who's going to do the work, you or me? Because if I'm spending the money on your space, it's very different rent than if you're spending the space. So I want to really try to understand the business, and part of that is asking, do you have a business plan? Do you have, historical P&L statements and balance sheets that I can take a look? It's not unlike underwriting if you're a lender, of any type. You're sitting there saying, okay, I'm trading rights in my real estate, i.e. rights in my space, to you for the next 5 or 10 years. As a tenant, you need to demonstrate to me that you can successfully run this business and pay rent over the next 5 years. And it's not just about paying rent. It's about being a positive addition to the shopping center. So I need you to be open in the entire space. I need you to operate in a first-class manner. I need you to do what you say you're going to do. So if you say you're going to be a Greek-style restaurant, that's what I need you to do. I can't have you selling shoes one month and jewelry the next month. And so, we really are, we care about them. We also care about the co-tenants in the center and the community. There's a lot of synergies there. It has to work. So a lot of the work that we do is digging in. So if I am going to hire an in-house leasing agent, or I'm going to work on buying a shopping center, I need someone that can do tenant underwriting and tenant evaluation. Part of that is saying, okay, let's say we're going to buy a shopping center. We're looking at the rent roll. We're trying to figure out, okay, how long has that tenant been in business? If they've been here since 1984,
right,
pretty good sign. If they're 2 years in business, not sure. The other thing is, a lot of times in shopping centers, good shopping center managers and owners require tenants to report gross sales. And so I can look at the tenants' gross sales and say, they do $400 a square foot. That's a very good number for this market, for that type of use. And therefore, I know that by definition, they're successful as compared to that same tenant doing $200 a square foot. So we're looking at what kind of rent are they paying? What's their sales history? What's their business plan? What's the sales trends? And we're also simply walking into the space and taking a look around. If you could pick, if this center was vacant, you could put anybody in there. Yeah. Is this who you'd put in there? Yeah. So there's a lot of that type of analysis. It's half art, half science.
Which is the interesting piece, because you have a community tie, like you mentioned earlier. You have a community tie element, which is what's best for this community, not what's like in a multifamily scenario. I would always say, what's going to be best for my cash flow? What type of tenant? Not like being discriminatory, but I'm saying like, do I want to run a building over here, Class D, or over here, Class A, or over here, Class B? Like I'm thinking about those different types of tenants. But with a shopping center, you're thinking about what does the actual community need, because now all those people from those apartment buildings are coming to you, or from the houses are coming to this shopping center to frequent it. I like the art of that better than placing tenants in a residential scenario, because there is an art and it's fun. It's like, all right, well, there's 3 pizza joints within a quarter mile of here. Do we really need another pizza joint, or could we use a dry cleaner? Or do we want to press it and put a smoothie place in a small town? Would that do well? Or do we really want a vape shop? Does that throw the right image off to our, like those kind of things? I think that's really cool. That's creative,
It's definitely a puzzle, and you have a lot of latitude in what you can do with your spaces, as you mentioned, unlike, multifamily. And, and it can be a lot of fun. And I would tell you that, one of the things is you learn a lot in doing this. You work with a lot of different types of businesses, a lot of business owners, and you really do learn about their business and what's important to them and what's not important. I remember when I first started, we had an empty space in a shopping center, and I was calling florists. And after 10 no's to say, I'm not coming to that shopping center, one of the people said, look, Gene, it's this simple. The wire services, FTD and Teleflora, whatever they were at the time, they control the flower market. And unless you've got the ability to get those guys to agree to a new location, it's not going to happen. It saved me a lot more phone calls. So, it's just beginning to learn the business. You can't put a restaurant in a space that doesn't have right utilities, plumbing, gas, water, sewer, grease trap, the right level of HVAC on the roof, and the appropriate parking.
Right.
And so it's a matter of just sitting down and saying, okay, if the center was empty, what would be great? What would be the ideal tenant mix? And then how do you work it in that direction? So
this is the part where you and I are still bad at math. However, we know formulas really well. This is the formulaic part. So for all those people listening who are not great at math, be great at formulas, because figuring out a formula, like when you envision in your head this like bustling little strip center and people are happy and kids are skipping down the street, the sidewalk eating ice cream, like what does that look like? That's a formula that you have to figure out how to put the X and Y and Z, and it'll equal a successful and cash flow producing and, hopefully gross rent multiplying and revenue, doubling kind of place. And in addition to equity multiplying and all that other stuff. But this is the formula we were talking about earlier. And this is what interested me so much more in this type of investing over the residential space. Nothing against those. This is just my personal thing. And it happens to be yours too.
Yeah, well, and I would say too, the nice thing about shopping centers too is there's an art to setting rents, right? And it's very different in multifamily and other property types that are a little more of a commodity. There may be 3 or 4 2-bedroom, 2 baths, in 1 mile of here that I could rent, and they're substantially similar, and so the rents are going to be within a band. But I would tell you that in particularly in the retail we're talking about, the service, convenience. You think about a restaurant, if they can pay 10% of their gross sales, if a 5,000 foot restaurant does $400 a foot in gross sales, it's $2 million a year. Right. If they can pay 10%, it's $200,000. Right. And so that's the rent on 5,000 feet. That's $40 a foot. So I don't care if the market is $15 or $20 a foot for a 5,000 foot space. If I have a $2 million restaurant and they can pay 8 to 10%, of gross sales, the rent is it's $30 to $40 a foot. So there's definitely an art to this. Yeah. But certainly it's a lot of fun, as you suggest.
So that's what it was. That's what it was that got me that one day where we were talking about, I don't know how we got started on this, but you said in shopping centers, it doesn't matter what the guy down the street is charging, because if this guy's doing triple what that guy is doing in a similar size space in a similar business, and this guy can afford that, this is what he's paying to be here. And it's not that it's like unfair or some kind of price gouging. It's, hey man, like we're going to help do everything we can to drive traffic here and make sure the shopping center is as attractive as possible and has the right type of businesses in the mix. And you're doing twice the revenue of that restaurant that's a quarter mile or half mile down the road. So yeah, he's paying $15 a foot and you're paying 40, but you're also doing double what he's doing. And you're still making, 35% more revenue at the end of the day. What does it actually matter? That's the cool part. That you can't comp it. I mean, can you comp a shopping center? But it's really just a benchmark of somewhere to start, right?
It's a benchmark to start. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would just say that there's so much nuance to every individual space, how wide it is, whether you can circulate around the back for deliveries and loading, who your co-tenants are, what the parking field up front looks like, the sign. Is there a big column holding the facade up right in front of your space, which is going to make visibility and access a challenge? Right. There's so much nuance to every space. Every 2,000 foot space is just simply not the same in terms of rent and in terms of desirability, which are essentially the same thing, supply and demand. And so, to a large extent, commercial rents, particularly in these shopping centers, they are tied to sales, oftentimes directly through percentage rent clauses, as an example. So, there's the opportunity to create greater upside for yourself for that reason.
Yeah. So, how does somebody? Well, here's what I want to do first. The audience knows I don't plug a lot of stuff, but what I really love is that I've been immersed in the multifamily and single family space for a very long time. So that's where my knowledge and maybe it's like a self-described expertise, which maybe it's not an expertise because I've had a lot of failure, but I have had good success too in the investing space. What I really liked was that you have this really easy way of breaking these steps down to understand the fundamental basics to build this foundation that's real strong. Instead of saying like, all right, well, we'll just go out and buy a shopping center. Like, if people are paying attention, you just threw out a lot of little idiosyncrasies and little details that are going to be crucial in your pricing and in tenant placement and in your purchase and all those things. But I love your course because it's just so simple, and it literally is a roadmap. Here to here to here to here to here to here. Okay, now you're ready to go start to look. This is what you're looking for. Now you're ready to write an LOI. Now you're ready to make, get this thing under contract. Now you're ready to do this. And I'm plugging it because I helped with some of the structure. So I feel great about that. And that I'm very clear that people are going to learn this thing at a high rate. So for people out there that are wondering, well, how do I get started in this? Because this sounds really awesome. The same way it did for me. Gene has a course, and we're going to talk to you about that at the end. But right now, I want to just, how does someone get started? Besides buying your course and learning about it, if somebody's like, well, I'm pretty versed, and I just want to, I'm the kind of guy that just drops the hammer, and then maybe I'll take the course later. How does someone get started? Like, where do you even go? Where do you start? Let's play naive for a second. I'm going to play totally naive.
Sure. I mean, as you said, short of just taking the class, right. What I would do is I would go online and I would look under some of the real estate auction sites at shopping centers for sale. And I would begin to look at those shopping centers, get the offering memorandum and just take a look at the terminology and begin to think about, if you own that center, what would you do next? Right? Think about, do the rents feel high? Do the rents feel low? Do the tenants feel like they're the right types and size of tenants for that property? If there are 3 or 4 vacancies in the center, what are some ideas of what you'd put in there? Now, you're not going to know everything, but what you're beginning to do is put a business plan together. You're beginning to put the pitch to the investors together, which is, hey, I've got this great opportunity. It's a 30,000 foot shopping center in Nebraska. It's got these types of tenants and these types of uses, 3 vacancies. What are some complementary types of uses that would make sense in there? And, it's the same sort of back of the envelope math. We're buying an income stream. What are we going to pay for that based upon the perceived risk of it? The world thinks that's risky. but that's where I would start. Things that are going to be harder to figure out is you're looking at the center that has 3 vacancies, and you say to yourself, you know what? I'd love to put a pizza shop in there. That would be great.
Yeah.
But what you don't realize is the grocery store. There's a small grocery store in there. The grocery store has a limitation on the amount of prepared foods you can sell in the center.
Right.
It has an exclusive or a site restriction.
Right.
And so those are the places you get tripped up. And you're not going to always find that in the offering memorandum is, tenants have exclusive uses. If you want me to open an ice cream store, I want to be the only ice cream store, and the next person can't sell ice cream. Or I have a site restriction that says you can't do anything with the parking lot. We might look at the center and say, it'd be great. What if we put a McDonald's in the parking lot?
Yeah.
And create $60,000 and a 6 cap, it's $1 million in value creation.
Right.
But what you didn't realize is that maybe there's FAR limitations on buildable area from a zoning standpoint. Maybe the anchor tenant in a property has a limitation on what you can do with the parking lot for signage and visibility reasons. So there's a lot of things we need to think about when we look at these centers, but I would go online, start to download some of these for sale properties, and just begin to immerse yourself in the language, the terminology, and the creativity of, if I own this thing, what would be a great vision for what this thing looks like 2 years from now?
Yeah, that's the big piece. That's a really cool piece, is the creativity. So when you say like a pizza shop, is there like a place that you wouldn't put a Papa John's or a Pizza Hut, and a place that you'd want to bring more local? Or is it like, man, we would be, like I'm thinking about the little tiny strip mall next to the Ramada. Nobody's going to know this unless they're from this area. You know what I'm talking about? The Papa John's next to Music Around.
Yep.
How did that little tiny shopping center get Papa John's? Is it because it's on York Road, or is it because it's a nice center, or it's got tons of parking and visibility, or is it all of those things? And would a local pizza joint do just as well in a center like that? And would a Papa John's be okay in a center that's maybe not on a main road, or is that what they're looking for? I mean, I'm just thinking about when people are looking at shopping centers to buy, and they're like, man, I could get a Starbucks or a national tenant. They have a whole different set of criteria than a little Luigi's Pizza would, who's like a local guy, right?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I would say that the uniqueness of every property is just that it could be all those reasons you mentioned. It's hard to know. I would say with respect to a York Road corridor like we're talking about, there's such demand and such limited supply that you find retailers and operators taking whatever they can get. But I would say that probably the biggest thing, when you look at attributes of properties and what makes them work or not work for tenants, is probably parking and visibility, right? I mean, the reason these users, I'll say retailers, but these service, necessity, convenience, and retailers, the reason they want these shopping centers is largely visibility. Otherwise they'd be in the back of a business park doing whatever they do. Right. So a lot of it's that you want drive-by, easy access. Parking is a big one, though. It really is. A lot of older centers, particularly, have less parking than they should. They're overbuilt, and so while there's a lot of Ubers and ride sharing, there's still retailers in these uses they want parking. So that's a big part of it. But I don't know that there's hard and fast rules. What I would say is that tenants like Starbucks, they get the real estate game. They are very sophisticated in their site selection process, and you've really got to pay attention to current trends. Today they want to drive through. And so if you can't put them on an end cap and space with a drive through or on a pad site, probably going to be a tough time. The opportunities are to find shopping centers where they're in line, and you can take them out of the inline space and put them into your own center in a drive through or an end cap. That's the opportunity. Is to figure out that piece. I would tend to say too, if you find a shopping center that you're buying or considering, and it doesn't have a lot of national tenants in it, the probability of you getting national tenants, unless it's an A location, is going to be limited. There really is a synergy between what goes into a property.
That's what I was just thinking about that, because I mean, I feel like Starbucks will go anywhere, and like there's. But if you think about it, driving down Pacific Coast Highway last week with my kids, trying to get my son to go to sleep because he's off, schedule, and my daughter's like, Dad, I want a hot chocolate and a cake pop from Starbucks, and it was just me and the 2 kids in the car, and I'm like, cool, let's go to find a drive-through. Well, I drove for 5 miles and didn't find a drive-through Starbucks. I found 9 Starbucks, but I did not find a drive-through. And so I did not get, what am I going to do? Leave a baby sleeping in the car? Like,
Yep.
couldn't. It was not an option. And I'm used to that here. Almost every single one now has converted into a drive-through, and left strip malls and gone to a pad site or an end cap, like you said. Very interesting to point that out. Another thing I want to ask you about is the loan structure. Whereas a lot of the stuff that we've been researching could be non-recourse, and a multifamily is going to be a recourse loan. And for any of you that don't know just tell people what recourse and non-recourse is for those that don't know that word.
Sure. It's basically about personal guarantees and personal recourse against you if, you guaranteeing a loan on behalf of the lender.
Yeah. So can you get, I don't know how to ask this. Is it more prevalent to get a shopping center that's non-recourse or get a loan that's non-recourse and it's with a shopping center? Is that something that's pretty prevalent?
I wouldn't say more so or less so. I think that banks, it's funny, I talked to a friend of mine, a banker the other day about the same thing. And he said, there's a lender out there for everything. And, because I said to him, look, do you think there's an opportunity to get non-recourse loans? And he said, there are people that will do that deal for you. What he was saying is I wouldn't do it, but yes, you can find it. I would say that the perception in the market that retail is risky is going to lead to lower loan to values. You're not going to simply be able to borrow as much. And probably more conservative loan terms. And that could mean guarantees as well. And so, if I didn't want to guarantee a loan and wanted a non-recourse, the way I would think about it is, okay, I need to raise a little more equity for my deal. I'm going to ask my lender for 60%, not push it to 75. I can get to 75, but I'm going to put my name on the line, and I just have to decide how good do I feel about that. So, I think you're better off going in and saying, let me target 60%. Let me raise a little more equity. Frankly, the yields are going to be good. You can buy these shopping centers at an 8 cap. Cost of capital's, that's at 5. I would target interest only before I would target a higher loan to value.
And then you build just like a multifamily, then you reposition it, build it up, put some new tenants in, and then refinance it. Correct.
Yep. Either put a second loan on it or refinance it, but get that capital gain out today.
And is the repositioning process and building equity and NOI, is that kind of the same as a multifamily?
Yeah, it is. I just like multifamily, you've got 2 levers, right? You've got NOI. You can either increase NOI, you can drop the cap rate. Those are the 2 ways we have of creating value. And so, with retail, it's a little easier because, frankly, you can push the rents much harder than you can push rents on any type of multifamily or office space.
Yeah,
it's just there's too much of the same type of space out there for that to work in these other asset classes. So that's number one. Number two, there are ways to create synergies within the property by putting complementary uses that cross shop, right? A lot of what we want to do is make sure that there's a lot of cross shopping that takes place, particularly with your lead tenants. And so you might, you get a Starbucks, well, they can pay a lot of rent. You might make a deal with them because they're going to bring a lot of other traffic to your center, not just shoppers, but also other tenants are going to notice now that you have them, and frankly, they're a small anchor. So that's how I think about it. I think as far as sort of the other side of NOI is really recoveries, right? In these triple net leases that tenants pay, they pay for not only the base rent, but they pay common area maintenance, taxes, and insurance. So you're getting a large part of your operating expenses actually reimbursed. What you find is old leases that are where you have a shopping center run by someone that's maybe not so professional, or they just don't pay attention. There's a lot of upside there and increasing your recovery rate. So it's not just bringing rents to market or better than market and filling vacancy. It's also recovering your operating expenses, possibly putting percentage rent clauses in place as well. And on the cap rate side, we're going to try to drop the cap rate on the whole thing and take the risk out of the asset. And we do that by making sure we have long-term leases, no termination rights based upon things like gross sales kickouts, good credit enhancement. So we need guarantees, we need liens on equipment. It's sort of basic, the basic idea of underwriting to make sure you get paid.
Now, what happens if somebody, tenants go out of businesses, go out of business. It happens. Obviously, you're going to do as much homework as you can. Things happen. COVID happens. Events happen. what do you do? I mean, obviously we talked about sort of not jokingly, but it's a lot easier to take care of a tenant that's not paying than it is
Sure.
in the residential format. But what do you do in that case? I mean, most of the time these are businesses. These aren't individuals coming to you and saying, I'm going to sign on the dotted line. They're signing on behalf of the business. How do you recover? And if you go through an event like a COVID, how does a shopping center owner hold up when 4 out of 10 of the businesses have gone out and the rents are just disappeared?
Sure. It's a great question. And I think COVID, I'll speak to for a second. I dealt with a lot of tenants during COVID, and you get a lot of letters from these tenants basically saying, hey, since we're partners in this deal,
Right.
and so, we were never partners on the upside, but now we're partners on the downside, it seems.
Right.
So, I think you've got to be realistic in those scenarios where you say to yourself, okay, if I'm going to share the downside of this relationship, which apparently now I am, because they're saying I'm going to close or relocate or go bankrupt, reject the lease, and you can have the keys back. I think what you have to say to yourself is, if I'm going to work with you on the downside, how do I come out of this better?
Yeah.
In other words, if you need me to become a line of credit lender, which is effectively what I'm becoming, because you're not going to pay me for 6 months, so you can presumably pay other people, then how am I better off after having been your lender 6 months from now? And so maybe I get a longer lease term. Maybe I get a better guarantee. Maybe I clean up the lease. So maybe the lease, for example, had exclusives and restrictions on the property and what I can and can't do, both with the property and other types of tenants. Maybe we clean all those types of things up, because I want to be able to go back to the equity investors for whom I actually work, who gave me the equity to buy the center, and say to them, yes, I know it's unfortunate the tenant is not as liquid as they should be and didn't plan well, and now we've become a line of credit lender notwithstanding the lease. I'll tell you what, though, here's how it's going to be better in 6 months, even though we're going to give them some free rent or abate some rent or whatever it is. We've got these accommodations. And so long-term, we're better. Because I think that idea of, remembering we work for equity investors, and that's our fiduciary obligation first and foremost. They gave us the equity, and we need to be good stewards of that. Right. And for that to be the case, we can't just be given handouts. These people have leases, they made commitments to us, and we expect them to adhere to it. As a practical matter, look, during COVID, we had to do a lot of negotiation. I would say back to sort of non-COVID times, it's a lot. It comes down to personal guarantees. At the end of the day, and corporate guarantees are great because the corporations pay whether you're doing well or not. Sure. It's really a question of, with mom and pop and small operators, if they have to guarantee the lease personally, and we don't need 5 years worth of guarantee, but we need them to have enough at stake so when they're having a problem, they come and talk to us. So what I've said to people is, look, your rent's $100,000 a year, and you got a 5-year lease. You owe us $500,000 over the next 5 years. I'd like a personal guarantee, and frankly, I don't need a $500,000 personal guarantee, but I would like you to guarantee 18 months of rent on a rolling basis. So at any given time, your exposure is limited to 12 months or 18 months worth of rent. It's still a lot of money, $150,000. They're not going to walk away from that. And what I say to them is, look, if you're starting to have problems, you will know it before I do. Yep. Sales go down, costs go up, your margins are gone, you can't have employees, you got competitors in the market, your great manager left, you're sick, you want whatever problems you have, I want you to come to me, and I will begin to work on finding a replacement for you right now. But what I don't want you to do is suffer in silence, and then one day you're just gone. Yeah. So if you've got enough of a guarantee, you will talk to me when the time comes to talk. It's that simple. And so if you come to me and say, look, I really need out of here, I probably got 6 months left before I really am out of cash. Yeah. I'll say, great. I want you to sign an agreement that basically says you'll allow me, the landlord, to terminate your lease with 30 days prior notice. Now I can get rid of you, notwithstanding your 5-year lease. Now I can terminate the lease. And I can then say to my leasing team, go out there and find me a replacement tenant. We now have control of the space. Yeah. They're happy to let us show it, whatever it is. That doesn't mean we're going to let them out for free. There's cost to turning the space, but at least they're willing to work with me. So that's the best way, is they've got to have something at stake. Other quick things you can do: large security deposits, take a lien on the equipment, furniture, fixtures that are in the space, and put a lien on the liquor license. Those are some other ideas.
Interesting. Okay, I never thought about that. I knew about the equipment, chairs and stoves and pizza ovens and stuff like that, but on the liquor license, that's very interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. Does the liquor license go with the business or with the space?
It depends.
Okay.
We've had them both ways.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes if, for example, in the Baltimore market, we've gone out and bought liquor licenses that are owned by the shopping center in one of our names as one of the executives of the company. In that case, we will sometimes transfer the license and retain a lien on it, or we will basically rent a license to them.
Yeah.
Because licenses to be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Sure.
We'll simply say to them, hey, you know what? For $30,000 a year, you don't have to buy it. You can just pay us rent for it for the duration of the lease.
Yeah.
It's an asset for us.
Yeah, I like that a lot. All right, Gene. So lastly, the teaching element. So I know when you left the corporate world, you love to teach, kind of like I do. You love to mentor, to teach, just to give the knowledge and the experience and the expertise back. So what's that look like for you, and like how have you branched that out? Because it's not just about creating courses or going to schools and teaching, but like talk about the teaching world for you and why that was so important in your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure, it's funny how a C student, poor math kid ends up teaching. But back in 2006, I started teaching at Johns Hopkins in their Master's in Real Estate program. I'm still teaching there 15 years later. 10 years ago, I started teaching in Georgetown's graduate program, Master's in Real Estate. And so, that's a lot of fun. I've done many, many courses online, in person. I love in person, ton of fun. And what I've sort of learned through the process is that I have a lot of content and I have a valuable message, but I'm having trouble reaching the audience that I'd like to. And so what I've really done is said to myself, it would be best for me, and I think for others, if I could figure out a way to sort of package this up in a digestible form that people could do, on their own time, frankly, around the world. And so that's what I'm developing is really a set of courses under Parker University and Parker Advisory, where these courses are set up as individual courses or as modules. And it's primarily on commercial real estate, but I would tell you it also branches into leadership and organization development and sort of business startup, because I watched so many businesses sort of go the wrong direction. Yeah. So those are broadly the topics.
Yeah, I love that, man. So it's the same thing that we're doing with our coaching business. I think some people in a scarcity mindset call it greedy. With the amount of help that we give individuals, I wanted to expand that, just like you did. I want to say, hey, man, instead of helping 1,000 people a year, what would it be like if we could help 100,000 people a year? That's super cool. And now our mission is being fulfilled even at a higher level. So I love that you're doing that. I've been a part of helping you design and build these courses, and it's been fun for me because I love to do this. I love to build businesses and help people. And I've been learning at the same time through what you're teaching. So I wanted to bring this to the Mental Purpose community because I think it's extremely valuable for those that want to get into this. And for those that don't, hey, guess what? For the last hour, you just learned about a cool guy's story and maybe something about investing in real estate that you didn't know about before. Because truthfully, I don't know a lot of people that know about shopping centers in my world. So here's how we're going to do this. For everybody listening right now, if you are a part of the Mental Purpose community on Facebook, great. Gene's going to be teaching for free, which by the way is like $1,000 worth of stuff because Gene's get 26 years in this thing. So, Picasso draws a little thing on a napkin and the lady says, how much? And he says, $50,000. And she says, well, I just saw you draw it. It took like 5 minutes. And he goes, yeah, but it was 40 years of trial and error to be able to get this to a 5-minute little drawing. And so that's what we're doing here is we're taking everything that you've learned over the last 26 years doing this and failing and succeeding at a really high level, by the way, and condensing into a very structured and formatted, is it 16 steps? 17?
Yeah, so I've got 19 now, and I'm condensing it down to basically 12 individual courses, just to try to make it a little more digestible.
Yes, perfect. So 12 courses, 12 individual courses to get you from I'm not sure about shopping centers to you bought your first shopping center, literally, and you are running it, managing it, financed it, everything in a nutshell for you to be able as successful as possible. We're going to do the first 2 courses for free. I really support what Gene's doing. I love learning about this stuff, and I want the Mental Purpose community to benefit from it. So Gene's agreed to do the first 2 courses for free. So we're going to do those on, one will be today, September 20th. So if you're listening to this on the 20th and you are not a part of the Mental Purpose community, get your butt over, type in the Men on Purpose community on Facebook, put your information in. If you don't put your email in, I'm not going to let you in. You got to follow the rules. So put your email in. I'll let you in right away and join us later that evening. Just take a look at the events tab and you'll see Investing in Shopping Centers with Gene Parker from Parker Advisory and Parker University. For those of you that are in the group, just go to the events tab, click on it, and you'll see it September 20th and 27th. So we're going to run them on Mondays. So the 20th will be lesson 1, course 1, and the 27th will be course 2. And then Gene's going to be a regular in the group anyway, and just answering questions about shopping centers and commercial investing and multifamily for that matter, because you have an expertise in that. But I'm really excited about this, and it's something that I want other people to get excited about, because guess what? It is a blue ocean inside of a red ocean. It's the pocket where the blood isn't. And we're going to dive into that, and we're going to catch some cool fish. So, yeah, this is awesome, man. Where can people find you? Tell them about your website. Tell them about anywhere they can find you on social media.
Yeah, ParkerAdvisoryUSA.com is probably the best. And then, I would say that, and then all my social media links are really off of ParkerAdvisoryUSA.com.
Got it.
That's the best place.
All right, love it. Well, Gene, as always, this has been informative, even to me, and I hear you talk about this every week. But there's lots of opportunity in this space, and I really appreciate you coming on, man, and not keeping the secret anymore, and putting this stuff out there so a lot of people can benefit. I know I myself, shout out to a couple other guys in the group that have learned a lot from you in terms of shopping center investing, and we're starting to put some stuff under contract right now. So we have you to thank for that, really. My confidence level has you to thank for that. Let's put it that way, because I might be dumb enough to go write a contract on a shopping center, but without you, I would not have the level of confidence that I do today. So I really appreciate your knowledge, your course, your commitment to this, to sharing this with the audience, and helping us out too, the Men on Purpose community, and me as a man on purpose, and you being a man on purpose. I think it's awesome. So this has been great, man. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate it, Ian. Thanks. It's always great to catch up. I love chatting about these things. As you said earlier, we could go on for hours and do this. And I think, together, it's further faster. So let's do it.
Love it. All right, Gene. Well, thanks for joining us, audience. You know what to do. September 20th is going to be course 1, Intro to Shopping Center Investment. And September 27th, that's a Monday. The following Monday is going to be course 2. Let's get rolling in shopping center investment. You've got to join the Men on Purpose community to be able to do that. It's the Men on Purpose community on Facebook. Make sure you put your email and you are in. We'll get you in and we'll get you a part of the course, and it will blow your mind. I guarantee it. It's awesome. So thanks for listening today, and we'll catch you on the next one.